Donald Scott Smith was born on February 13, 1955, in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Donald Scott Smith, better known by his middle name, was a talented musician from an early age. He began studying guitar before moving on to bass at the age of 12. It wasn't long after that he got his big break when, while studying at the University of Manitoba, he was approached by Paul Dean, the lead guitarist of a recently formed Canadian rock band named Loverboy. The original bass player had quit not long after they began playing gigs, and Scott jumped at the chance to live his dream. Loverboy was initially rejected by all the major record labels in the US, but on March 20th, 1980, they signed with Columbia Records of Canada, a label owned by Sony. The band's self-titled debut album was released just 5 months later and launched the group into stardom, selling over 1 million records in Canada alone. Following the success of the album, they toured with the likes of Zaz, Top, and Def Leppard, and in the autumn of 1981, they released their second record, Get Lucky. While supporting the band journey, Get Lucky became the group's best-selling record in the US and sold over 4 million copies. Loverboy subsequently received several Juno Awards in recognition of their achievements as a group. As well as being the band's bass player, Scott was also a songwriter, being credited with co-writing several of Loverboy's songs, including their 1983 hit Lucky Ones. For several years, Loverboy rode the wave of their success, but in the mid-1980s, tension rose between lead singer Mike Reno and guitarist Paul Dean. In 1987, the band released their fifth album, which performed surprisingly poorly, and in 1988, Loverboy announced their split, largely due to difficulties between Dean and Reno following the breakup. Scott joined the band Dangerous along with Reno and worked a brief stint as a late-night radio DJ. Loverboy reunited momentarily in 1991 to perform a benefit concert, and a further 2 years later, the band rejoined again to tour throughout the 1990s. Scott reportedly told journalists, "The band got back together because we like to rock and simply because promoters wanted to book us." Scott was last seen on November 30th, 2000. While the band was on break from tour that day, he decided to take out his sailing boat, a 36-foot craft named the Sea Major. Described as an avid and experienced sailor, he aimed to sail to a marina south of LA with his fiancée Yvonne Mayat and longtime friend Bill Ellis, who had been a roadie for Loverboy during the 1980s. The three planned to stop in Mexico before reaching LA. Bill would later recall the events of the day while speaking with the Montreal Gazette. "We were just 2 hours out from the dock in San Francisco. 1 minute he was there and the next he was gone. It happened very quickly." According to reports, the day had started okay. There was a little bit of fog, but the winds were calm. But around 48 that afternoon, weather conditions suddenly turned. Both Bill and Yvonne were below deck when a 25-ft wave hit the boat, knocking it to its side and tearing the steering wheel from the vessel. Bill stated, "I went down below to change into my foul weather gear so I could relieve Scott, and then the wave hit and the boat went over on its side. Within seconds, I went back up and Scott was gone. We turned back around but couldn't find any of the debris or cushions or the man overboard pole." 20 minutes later, following a distress call from the Sea Major, a Coast Guard helicopter arrived. 2 boats reached the scene 10 minutes later. There was no sign of Scott, and the worsening weather conditions meant that the search had to be called off prematurely. The search for Scott or his body continued the following day, but was ended that afternoon by the Coast Guard. Bill, along with his friends and family, hired a private team to keep looking until Sunday. Unfortunately, there was no trace of the 45-year-old. He was pronounced missing and presumed dead. He left behind 2 young children along with his fiancée. In 2007, Loverboy singer Mike Reno reflected on the news that one of his closest friends was gone. "I didn't think I could go on with the band. The last thing I felt like doing was singing songs that Scotty and I and the boys had been playing together for 22 years at that point." He said that it was both time and messages of support from friends that helped him ease back into playing music again, with fans stating that it would be a double tragedy if Loverboy never toured again. That same year, the band released a new album which included the track Stranded, a tribute to their bass player. The remains of Scott have never been located.